Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, and I'm very pumped to be talking about Starfield Shattered Space because today we got an extensive look at this expansion. It's coming out September 30th, and we also got to look at everything from the story to the gameplay to some of the minor jump scares, the music. We got to really feel this thing out in an almost 10-minute presentation, which was surprisingly more than I ever expected them to show off for Shattered Space, but it really did clarify a lot, particularly on the story front already. I'm very excited to see where they take things. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into what's going on with Bethesda, RPGs, gaming in general, we talk about it all, consider subscribing. Let's begin off at the top here, where they confirm something that we already kind of knew, but I think there's a little bit of nuance that I want to just lean into to open things up. We already knew that Starfield Shattered Space was going to be a more focused expansion compared to what you get in the base game. In the base game, we already know, million loading screens, not that satisfying space travel, and not the exploration we've come to know and love in the BGS game. But Shattered Space looks to target that weaker exploration element and make it much better. And what we did learn in this little theater presentation is that not only is it all going to be focused on this planet, but that you're never going to leave it when it comes to the quest line itself. They do confirm that you can leave whenever you personally want to, but when it comes to the quest line, you're not going off-world. And I think this is great because we're going to really feel out what Starfield could have been with this sort of exploration, and if this is a direction that Bethesda Game Studios is going to march in with the future of the expansions, of the downloadable content that this game does provide, because this is kind of sounding like what we wanted out of Starfield more and more. So just the nuance there is that you can leave whenever you want, but that you're not going to be leaving for the main quest line, which I think will be good because it should minimize, I hope, loading screens. We also got to visualize the spooky tone of this expansion. It's really cool to see Bethesda Game Studios leaning in this direction. There's a lot of inspirations I'm seeing here in this DLC, from Alien all the way to Red Rising in some ways I'll talk about with the story. And I just love how it's pulling all of these different sci-fi threads and kind of becoming its own thing. But in particular, some of Starfield's best missions, in my opinion, are the ones that lean into the tension a little bit more. Like Bethesda Game Studios is always known for walking, talking, and killing, but I think Starfield unveiled a new element that they should continue to explore in stealth and tension building, and you see that right away in the theater presentation when there's a little bit of walking around, the music's very low, you see the lights flickering, little visuals that you don't typically find in BGS games are here. And then you get a little bit of a jump scare at the end. You see the vortex horrors diving through portals out of nowhere. I could see some really cool moments happening here because BGS has done creepy before. I do think of Point Lookout a little bit, where that was a little bit strange. And so I am just excited to see Bethesda Game Studios marching in this direction. We also got to see briefly that the vehicle will be usable on this planet. I didn't doubt that, but I didn't know if it would actually be worth using because we didn't know when this was introduced, which was a month ahead of the expansion, if all of Shattered Space was designed with this vehicle in mind. There really wasn't enough time for Bethesda Game Studios to work out any kinks if the public didn't like it. So a touch risky there, but we can see that the vehicle is drivable on the planet and that there are going to be big expanses of nothing between locations, which is going to give that Mass Effect 1 feel, which is what I'm talking about, like pulling those sci-fi threads from all these different angles. And again, lining up to be what many of us wanted from Starfield in the first place. Now, continuing on here, we do get some interesting story details that explain even some things immediately. Grav drive technology, this was something that House Va'ruun was experimenting on, and it went wrong, leading to a tear in the fabric of space-time. And so that right away seems to kind of explain, if we're assuming a little bit, where House Va'ruun went, right? We know already the grav drives allowed us to jump from star system to star system thanks to just playing Starfield. And so when you have technology go wrong, and one of the big mysteries in the game is where did House Va'ruun go? We knew they had this homeworld of Va'ruun Kai, but it was somewhere out there. And now we know they just all disappeared because they were likely warped there during this experiment that went south. It has been said that this story focuses on the aftermath of that event, which is only a few weeks old. So the civilization has yet to repair. And I say civilization because one thing that I didn't expect here is I was thinking this was going to be very culty, and it is very culty, but also it's very civilized. Like there's just civilians and people hanging out, and they're kind of lost and looking for loved ones who have disappeared as well. So I'm very interested to explore Dazra as a city because I did not anticipate this element here. And one thing they talk about as well is the houses. There are a bunch of minor houses of Va'ruun that are vying for control of the faction's future, which reminds me of two things. It reminds me of Far Harbor in the actual setup of the narrative and a playable experience where you had all these different factions vying for the control of this island effectively and the fate of it. At the same time, it also reminds me a bit of Red Rising, which I've been reading lately. I'm about halfway through now, where you have these houses, very Game of Thrones-like, in this sci-fi world. And so I haven't read too deep into the series, as you can tell, but it does give me a little bit of that energy where it's a little more, I would say, medieval feeling, political feeling, at the same time as being sci-fi, which just reminds me a bit of that book. A good book so far. If anyone wants to check out a really good sci-fi series, I would recommend looking into that. But on topic here, we see how it's much more civilized. There's going to be more choices, and they say that the fate of House Faroon can impact the settled systems. And I wonder if this is a tease for what's to come in another expansion based on the decision you make here, or if it's a more immediate impact where, let's say I bring House Faroon in its full-fledged power back to the settled systems. What is the impact there? I do wonder, because a lot of this story is explaining how they got cut off from the settled systems, how they managed to survive, and then likely how they can come back. And I would love to see the comeback be in a way that kind of disrupts the main story, because you do go to the House Faroon embassy, and that's one of the first mysteries set up is, where did they go? No one really knows exactly where they went. We just hear about this great serpent, and there are remnants of House Faroon, these zealots, but that's really it. They also describe the story as a search for knowledge going too far, and it seems more scientific and experimental based on just a couple of quick visuals. When they're talking about it, you see like equations on a chalkboard, and you see like these bodies that were being experimented on. So we don't know what this grav drive technology was actually being built for. We don't know the hows and whys of it all, but we just know that they're going too far. And so it's in line with Starfield's themes, which I think is very interesting, because obviously it has gone so far that they've completely isolated an entire faction away from the rest of the civilized galaxy. So very keen to see what goes on there. We also got more gameplay details in minor and major ways. One way that seemed pretty minor, but I think it could have a major impact, is how AI is behaving. Right now, they're saying that it's going to be more aggressive in combat, and they do show that off where it's kind of all over you. You're getting attacked from all angles, and they said that this really fit the vibe of the expansion, and I think this would be good because Starfield's combat, especially if you're leveled up, is pretty easy, so I like the idea of trying to get out of the way as quickly as possible. I wonder if there's going to be any perks or skills or evolutions to my character beyond the weapons I hold. Maybe some powers that you pick up. That would be also interesting because I don't really use those often, so I would like for the game to get more aggressive to promote me using them. But otherwise, they also showed off gravity anomalies. I thought this was really cool because it can kind of change the dynamic of your on-foot exploration, where you'll find these pockets of just zero gravity and float up to the top of a cliff. And so on top of the things I thought Starfield did really well, which is like its moment-to-moment spooky gameplay that it would occasionally have, I do think the zero gravity moments were also really good. So to see that kind of compartmentalized into what's happening here with this planet and the exploration while you're in an exterior, not like a ship in space, is a really cool idea, and I'm a big fan of it. They also showed off brand new weapons like the Varun Starstorm, which looks really good. It's like this heavy machine gun that just fires away, and so there's plenty of new weapons, it looks like, as well. And yeah, I just am very excited by everything I saw here. I'm just really jonesing to get my hands on it and see if the execution is there. Like, do they deliver a good story again? And yes, again, I'm one of those people who enjoys the questing in Starfield. Sue me. But yeah, I think Starfield knocked it out of the park in many areas when it came to questing. So I'm very much looking forward to what they do with House Faroon and the questing experience there. Of course, I've talked ad nauseum about Andreja and what they're doing with her character and how I think that'll be very exciting to see it explored, because I think you hear her during the trailer telling you not to dock. It may have just been a member of House Faroon, but nonetheless, I'm very excited to see how her character grows here. And I see the replay opportunities, like how does Sam behave in a moment like this? Like, how does he act during this storyline compared to Andreja, who it's clearly based around? I do wonder about that. More than anything, Starfield left me and many of you a little sour because we already knew how much we valued the exploration experience, and it was very much missing in Starfield. And so I'm very keen to just get back into that groove, because I feel like a piece of me is missing where I play a BGS game. I'm like, man, like, how does the 76 exploration lap Starfield? So I'm very excited to see, with the response to the feedback there, what exactly the game plan is for good Starfield exploration, because they keep referring to it as like, this is like our old stuff, this is like our old stuff, like really trying to get the message across. So yeah, 10 minutes of really exploring what this thing's going to be, and I am excited, naturally. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave it in your hands. What do you think of what you saw of Starfield Shattered Space? Did this presentation push you over the edge? Are you waiting for reviews? Let me know down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.